recording. Great, so here we are. Thank you so much for joining today, being a public holiday. And just like to say, as I was saying, just as you were arriving, so many people here are in either music or in education or just in the caring profession, and there's parents. So in many ways, what I'm speaking about is geared towards teaching an instrument to an individual person. However, the roles that everybody plays in education and parenting, music, therapy, nearly everything I say will have a pretty direct application in those areas, as well as teaching music. So thanks for joining. Thanks for your interest. I'm pretty excited about this work that I've been getting into, and I'm eager to share it. And so, again, thanks to Jane for being my co-host. Not sure how I got into all of this, but I started teaching piano way back when I was in year 12. And that means now I have 49 years of unbroken experience. I basically have never done anything else. And as I recall it from way back in my teen years, I was aware of curious inner sort of stirrings, and it would have me seeing things and hearing things like phantom things moving around within me. All sorts of ideas and urges were brewing up inside, and they had me in their thrall. And in those days, it was all about painting for me. And naturally, knowing nothing about the subconscious mind, I presumed everybody's experience of reality was just like mine. I was very curious to explore these deep spaces of the mind. And unfortunately, in my teenage years, my classical piano outlet was terribly blocked. Performing terrorized me. And the few opportunities I had were doing exams and Eisteddfods. And they were very traumatic experiences. I feared and dreaded them. I had pretty horrible physical reactions. Now, back in the 1970s, these things were not spoken of. You just coped somehow, or you failed to. And it was only after decades of teaching and persisting with performing as an adult, and then later composing, that I got serious about investigating the subconscious regions of the mind. On the one front for composition, and on the other for facing performance anxiety. And now I'd like to share my screen, and you'll be seeing some slides. This will just take me a moment. Share screen. And I've got to find the right one. Here we go. So you'll be seeing some slides as we go through today. So I'm calling this the mystery of the musical mind. More recently, as you know, I've taken formal training and graduated with a diploma in hypnotherapy and NLP. My music has a new dimension and a companion profession. I'm now enjoying a lovely sense of illumination, some relief, and personal renovation in music. Indeed, on all fronts of life. So this presentation is just to give you a glimpse into the field. Some of you already know this, but for those who don't, it's just a glimpse. So we'll be together for about 90 minutes, and this container allows me just enough time to unpack a few, not very much, but I've created like a list of 21 subjects, which I cover in a 3-day teacher training workshops that I intend to be running in January in the Penrith Conservatorium at the Joan Sutherland Centre. I'm also in the pilot stages of writing a book. Now, just before we move on, you'll notice that you're looking at a big slide and just a little tiny Zoom movie. So if you would like to make a small adjustment to your viewing options, I'll just take you through a few little steps to do that. It would mean that instead of having the great big slide, as you're seeing it now, and then a tiny little video, we can make this around about half and half. So this slide you're looking at now is just a screenshot. And if you can do this, great. If it doesn't work, don't worry about it. So first step, where the big red arrow is, click the View menu item up in that top right corner. Then you'll get a drop-down box. And could you click where it says side-by-side speaker option, just on the slide where that yellow arrow is. And then hover the cursor, like get your mouse and hover the cursor in between the two images. That's the video and the instruction slide. So get the cursor in between, press and drag the cursor over to the left, making the video image and the slides about the same size. Then release your finger. So if it works, great. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. We can just move on. Let's dive in now and explore some of the mysteries of the musical mind. To do this, let's just take a moment to let the world outside fade away. I have a little story about learning. Get yourself settled and relaxed while I tell you this little story from long ago, all about learning. Feel free to close your eyes if you want. One morning, just on daybreak, a young gypsy girl was peeking through a crack in the window of the town's esteemed apothecary. At that hour, the apothecary would bring all sorts of medicines, tinctures and elixirs, potions and poultices, out from the back room and display them in the dispensary. Now, these were olden day times, and it was a gypsy girl's business to spy and contrive to survive. As she was spying on him, she watched the apothecary vanish through the thick stone wall at the back of the dispensary. Then, astounded, she saw him emerging again through that thick stone wall with a batch of clean glass jars. She was intrigued and quickly calculated how well her gypsy craft could be advantaged in having such magic. So a little later, when the dispensary was open for customers, the girl rang the doorbell and approached, asking, "Master, will you teach me to walk through walls as you do?" And he replied, "Yes, I will, but you need to become my apprentice and do everything exactly as I tell you, and you will learn." The young girl agreed eagerly and began to do everything her master asked, exactly as he told her. And after some time had passed, she approached him, saying, "Master, I have not yet learnt how to walk through walls." And he replied, "Be patient, little one. Continue to do everything exactly as I tell you, and you will learn." Now the girl had indeed done everything exactly as her master had shown her. And every couple of years she approached him, saying, "Master, I have not yet learned how to walk through walls." Each and every time he replied, Be patient, my apprentice. Continue to do everything exactly as I tell you, and you will learn. And you'll find out. And here we are, curious about music, teaching, learning, and performing. So let's delve into some of the mysteries of the mind. Have you ever been deeply touched or totally blown away by the sublime artistry of some performers? I sure have. Or have you ever been confounded when students are making the same mistakes over and over again, despite all repeated attempts? And do you ever wonder how to help people with unreasonable fears of failure and debilitating performance anxiety? But then, are you amazed at how kids learn to play and memorize so quickly? And why do so many adults lose this ability? In the end, do you ever wonder whether all your hard work, effort, and willpower will ever pay off? Well, sometimes they don't. The best of these virtuous approaches, hard work, effort, willpower, obviously go a long way towards success. However, on their own, at worst, they prove fragile, unsatisfying, and are often counterproductive. Fortunately, you can overturn the frustrations by learning how to deliberately engage the power of the subconscious mind for deep, effective learning and excellence in performance. Now, from now on in this talk, I'll be using the term unconscious mind, which is synonymous with subconscious mind. Now, here's what we'll do today. Just a little housekeeping so you know how we'll run through. I really welcome your questions. So I've allocated about 15 minutes for answering towards the end of the talk. That'll be around about 11:45. So after that, be sure to stay on because there's a little more to round this off. But in the meantime, at about halfway, after I've covered the first of 3 topics, I want to check in with you and just find out if there's anything unclear or pressing that you need to know before we can move further into the content. So when we get there, I'll ask you to wave your hand at me and unmute and ask your question. And if you feel a little reserved about coming forward and doing that, you might like to type it into the chat and Jane will have a look at that and ask on your behalf. Anyway, so that's for a little later. And right now I'm introducing a completely new field for many of you. And we need to cover some fundamentals before really getting into the musical applications from hypnotherapy and neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. I'll be showing you how you can elicit naturally occurring receptive states for optimal learning using some of the principles that operate in hypnosis. Now, having mentioned the word hypnosis, I assure you I'm not going to teach you how to deliberately hypnotize anyone. That's another whole thing. But hypnosis happens spontaneously every day when we allow ourselves to go into a relaxed state. So how many of you have found yourself daydreaming? Or maybe you've arrived home in your car after a trip, but can't recall doing that. It's an interesting phenomenon. However, driving in a trance has obvious risks. So you need to be aware of what you're doing and choose. Yet that's not always easy to catch in the moment. Equally, this holds true in music performance. We want to be aware of our intent at any given time so we can make a deliberate choice about the state required to meet the demands of the activity. Now, there's more we'll unpack about this in today's first two topics, which are intention and then the two minds, coming soon. Bit of groundwork first to cover. So it's natural and necessary for our well-being to slip into trance-like states over the day. And you may have noticed your pets gazing off into the distance, looking out the window, and they do this when they feel really safe. And now I want to debunk some false notions people have picked up from seeing stage hypnosis shows on TV. That's entertainment. Whereas hypnotherapy of the 21st century is practiced clinically for treating physical and emotional conditions in alternative, complementary, and mainstream situations. And this is on the increase, fortunately. And for us in music, it's all about utilizing the power of the whole human mind, both the conscious, intellectual, and the unconscious, intuitive capacities. So that's the whole person. So you could say it's holistic. We're seeking out naturally arising positive influences on our physiology to complement and enhance our cognitive abilities. So understand that trance in any form can never override a person's will or core values. Today, I'll introduce you to how we can utilize the unconscious mind's mysterious ways of making things happen as if by magic. And why not? We want to know how to communicate with this deep part of ourselves to bring its power in alignment with our goals, our musical goals, or any goals. It's not about changing your musical content or your teaching method. Instead, we are working towards understanding the structure of the mind. As teachers, we are members of the caring profession. Teachers of any sort, parents, therapists, just like you all here today. And we have ongoing, genuine intentions to learn more effective ways to assist the people that we're working with to realize their potential. That's why we're here today. And yet we can get things wrong, and we can be working counterproductively, unawares. And I include myself here. I've learnt a lot. And this is why my quest has been to find that key which unlocks the mysteries of the human mind in sharing music, learning and performing. So in bringing the best of hypnotherapy and neuro-linguistic programming into the music arena, I'm adopting the most potent principles. Now, you might find that you already know much of what I'm talking about, and you do, because it's all in tune with the most noble aspects of human nature and behavior. Having a good working knowledge and deliberately engaging with the unconscious mind, you'll be able to bring about very pleasing outcomes consistently and with every student, not just the talented ones. When you start testing things out for yourself and nudging your boundaries a bit, you'll see how magic starts happening. And now, some of you will know a little of NLP, but for those who don't, I'd like to run you through a quick definition. So what is neuro-linguistic programming? Commonly known as NLP. Now, just as hypnosis may have been culturally misrepresented, so too has NLP, particularly in political and advertising contexts. But just think of a hammer. Let's remember that some people will use a hammer to gain power and manipulate, while others, like us, choose to use a hammer the way it was originally designed and intended, to construct useful things. So NLP comprises a set of techniques employed in business, education, and therapy. And here I'm bringing it, along with hypnotherapy, into the musical arena. And to my knowledge, this is breaking totally new ground. So as you have a look at the slide there, I'll explain the NLP model. In a nutshell, the intention of NLP is to produce consistent excellence. Its founders investigated how we process the magnitude of information received from the outside world through our five senses. So that's the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. Now that's the neurological component of the term. Then the information coming in is heavily filtered immediately into manageable quantities so that we're able to cope with life in the physical world. The result being that internal representations are created. Subsequently, we respond to these internal representations physiologically and emotionally by attributing personal meaning and stories and creating labels to describe them. This is the linguistic component of NLP. What we come to make of these internal representations puts us in certain states of mind and body, which influence our behavior and indeed our health. The states we arrive in most frequently shape and form our personality, our attitudes, general behavior, and as I said, health. This accounts for the programming element of NLP. Now, remember that the purpose of NLP is to bring about human excellence. And now I'd like to introduce you to the prime directives of the unconscious mind. Some of them. So the prime directives are like the qualities of the unconscious mind. There are many, but just for understanding how they apply in learning, I've selected 10. Now here's the first 5. So the unconscious mind stores all our memories, both temporal and atemporal, meaning that if there's like a timeline, it can store memories according to chronological time. And then it can store memories in other categories, which don't have anything to do with time, but have more to do with the nature of the memory. And so it associates certain things and puts them together. And number 2, the unconscious mind organizes all memories and is in charge of recall. 3, the domain of the emotions. And the memories with emotions present are most memorable, including those which are fused with learning. And now number 4, the unconscious mind. The nature of this is that all our learning and behavior is unconscious. So everything we learn is actually unconscious and recorded in the unconscious mind. And the 5th one there, the unconscious mind has no capacity to process negative qualifiers. So words like no, not, don't, can't, mustn't, shouldn't, never, stop. All of these words cannot be processed. Now here I want to digress because this point is so important in all the work to understand this. This is not just music, it's everything. So let's do a little experiment here. Let me tell you, right now, whatever you do, don't think of a red skeleton. Don't think of a red skeleton. And what comes to mind? A red skeleton, of course. So perhaps you're familiar with the blue tree. I think most people are. So don't think of a blue tree, and yet you will have to in order not to. So here's another example. Imagine this. You're walking along with a child and you see a puddle up ahead and you call out to your child, "No, don't stomp in that puddle." Now, all they can see is the puddle because you directed all their attention to it. And you made a suggestion, which might be fun. Your prompts compel them to action. And this is not disobedience when they're very young. Babies are born into the world operating 100% in their unconscious mind. And it takes about 7 or 8 years for the conscious mind to develop and to be able to make the distinctions and to do some processing of language. And only gradually do kids learn to consciously decode language and make choices, that is within the confinement of their dependency on adults. And here's another example. Say you want to quit eating a certain type of commercial confectionery, let's say Snickers bars. So you tell yourself, stop eating Snickers bars. And you remind yourself, Snickers bars are bad for you. And you know there's Snickers bars coming up. So you convince yourself, you repeat to yourself, don't eat Snickers bars. And you go on and on. So now the existence of Snickers bars is amplified in your life and your mind. If you do manage to quit them by willpower, you might just find yourself getting hooked on Kit Kats instead. And this pattern will persist as they do. Chocolate is not the issue. It's likely to be more about getting healthy and fit. You want to be wearing those nice clothes that you bought for summer. Now notice all this self-talk and where's it coming from? Now this is a huge area with tendrils reaching into learning and performing music. And just as with the Snickers bars example, you want to ensure you identify what you really want and direct your focus to that. So you'll be getting my message that your word choice in teaching is crucial to getting the outcome you and your student have decided on. Even in passing little instances, give precise, positive instructions on what's needed, what's wanted, rather than pointing out where or when or how the playing is poor, faulty, lacking, incorrect. No, say what you want to achieve. And never frame what you're doing using the word try. That word is a minefield embedded with shades of doubt, insecurity, and effort. There are many other ways. So now I'd like to return to the list of the prime directives of the unconscious mind. So we'll take this through. The next feature or quality is that the unconscious mind is symbolic. It responds to symbols and it processes them in visions and dreams. So here, I just digress a little. When we use words, the unconscious mind doesn't actually understand English or Spanish or Italian or whatever. Words become images and feelings, and this is what the unconscious mind hears and responds to. Number 7, the unconscious mind cannot discriminate, so it takes everything coming in personally. Number 8, it needs repetition to incorporate and install new behaviours. 9, it takes the path of least resistance, so it can be idle when not directed. And finally, the unconscious mind can learn and integrate concepts at lightning speed. Now, to understand the relationship our consciousness has to the unconscious mind, I'd like you to think of a horse and its rider. Dr. Milton Erickson, who founded and developed modern hypnotherapy, described the dynamic of our two minds in one of his hypnotic teaching tales. Here's the gist of it. The horse, your unconscious and animal nature, is a powerful creature, emotional and sensitive, with enormous energy. As the rider, your conscious mind, you know where you want to go and what you want to do. The horse is yours. Its mission is to serve you. As far as the horse is concerned, there is no right or wrong about what you want. So the horse does whatever it thinks you want. But if it doesn't know for sure, it will do whatever it's always done and go wherever it's always gone, presuming that is what you want. And the horse can become restive and troublesome without a good rider. And a good rider directs the horse's course with consistency, using the reins and thigh pressure to steer, accelerate, slow down, and stop. The horse doesn't understand human languages, yet it hears and can be reassured by the emotional cues emanating from the rider's mind, touch, and tone of voice. The horse learns to trust the rider and feels safe, knowing it will not be led into danger. Only then can the horse unleash its latent power to carry out their arrival at the destination. And the horse has infinitely more power and speed than the rider does to do this successfully. Please keep that metaphor in mind as we progress into the content now, a bit deeper. We'll be touching on 3 topics. The first, intention and imagination. And after that, I'll just be asking you to, we'll check in and I'll find out if there's anything I need to answer. Then after our little break, the 2 minds, that's the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, their roles and functions, and finally metaphor and symbolism. And I'll be telling you stories, more stories. And to put you in the bigger picture, please understand that the material is all organic. It's very hard to create separated topics. So everything extends out in all directions. But these 3, I think, encapsulate all of it. Everything is woven together so beautifully. And speaking about questions, what is real? Well, you know, and maybe you can remember how kids so frequently transport themselves into fabricated realities which overtake and override real reality temporarily. They're using physicality as a backdrop to their imaginary world. They can distort it, delete certain things and people, and they introduce creations of fantasy to engage with. Their experience is real. It's a real one. And it overlays the raw time-space dimension adults come to live in most of the time. Kids can decide to play pretending games, and they do know when they're pretending, and they can make the choice to enter and exit, although exiting is often done reluctantly. Pretending is a universal behaviour that kids do naturally because they are rehearsing for things to come when they are adults. And here, just think of the musical implications, especially for teenagers and adults. Pretending is also a structured, universal rehearsal technique, setting up your tendencies for the role that you step into on stage as a performer. This is especially necessary for singers to go through. We're not kids anymore, but we are still capable of slipping in and out of fantasy land. The unconscious mind is highly impressionable in both wonderfully delightful and totally unpleasant ways. Now, here's an unpleasant example, forgive me, just to make a point. You can probably remember moments where your nervous system responded in a sharp shock on hearing about or seeing a gruesome accident or someone's flesh being pierced by a surgical procedure, perhaps on TV. In a flash, your body feels phantom pain. It's a protection reaction, a warning, a sensation of anticipated pain emitted from the central nervous system. Suddenly, there's a nasty shriek inside. Although it's not actually happening to you externally, there is an internal disruption. But we recover immediately. But it's interesting to reflect on how the suggestions penetrate the unconscious mind and body before you can even think. Understand this, the rational mind is slower to respond than the unconscious mind. And this is very good to remember when you're teaching or with anybody. And note that the unconscious mind's response to negative experiences is far stronger than what it generates for nice positive ones, real or imagined. Now, you might think this is unfortunate, but it's because the unconscious mind's top priority is to preserve your life, and you can count on that. Now let's do a quick exercise to explore the mind-body interplay. This is something simple and safe. Look, it's a bit clunky on Zoom, so I'll just go through it quite quickly, but I'll ask you to do it again in your own time a bit later when you can really get into it and sense it. And so we'll do some imagining. So if you can bring out your right arm and hand, extend the elbow. I know you can't see this. Sort of like this. So you have a pile of really, really heavy books. You've got to hold your palm out flat, and there's the books. They're sitting on your right hand, and they're really heavy. Now you might just close your eyes to really get a picture of those really heavy textbooks. They're old and dark and really heavy. And they're weighing you down. And it's hard work, really hard work. It's really tiring. So, okay, just picture that and feel what it'd be like. And now, on your other hand, your left hand, float it up. There's a piece of string looped onto your middle finger with a bunch of shiny, bright balloons, helium, and they're rising and you feel a little gentle tug on your hand, drawing it up and up into the sky. And you feel that pull upwards while the right arm is weighed down really heavily with those books. So just keep your eyes shut. Just be there for a few more seconds, feeling the two hands and arms. Okay, now put those books down and let the balloon float away. The loop slips off your finger. That's right. Just rest your arms now. Take a moment and feel the physical sensations. Notice the difference in the weight, the tonicity, and the temperature even of each arm. There's a residual feeling there. So I've taken you through this little exercise simply to demonstrate how the body responds of its own volition when you, and if you, fully engage your imagination. And this is interesting to note because from our minds on the inside to the sound waves outside of us, our bodies are the channel through which music flows. So we're interested in that connection. The imagination affects our emotions, completely altering our physiology and musculature, consequently influencing nuances of touch and tone in music. And it can work like magic. And I'll give you some real life examples from my studio very soon. You'll also see how this natural response mechanism is what makes metaphor such a powerful influence in learning and performing. And there are a few more real life examples coming later. So here we go. First topic is the intention and imagination, a coupling. It's an all-encompassing principle underpinning the mysteries of the mind. It's important to remember that as far as the unconscious mind is concerned, everything inside and outside is real. It can't distinguish the difference between the physical and the mental world. As we've seen, it is the conscious mind which does that job. Just think for a moment. Have you ever been so engrossed, enchanted, and captivated watching a great movie that you lost touch with your normal life for the time being? Or maybe you found yourself holding your breath and clutching the armrest in a picture theatre during a really scary or suspense-filled movie. And most people will say yes, but why are we talking about the movies? Well, it's because ultimately we want to learn how to play around with our internal and external realities for the pleasure to be gained in playing music and for giving excellent performances. And our intentions are generated, as you'll see on the slide, by the conscious mind with its propensity for creativity and initiative. On the other hand, the unconscious mind is the domain of the imagination with its vast reservoir of ideas generated from memories, dreams, fantasies, symbols, and emotions, which we can tap into. Now, I'll offer some perspectives on intention, first in the light of practice, and then we'll explore some on performance. So to begin with, have a look at this. The unconscious mind delights in rhythm, rhyme, repetition, ritual, and reward. These are all perfect matches for musical pursuits. And you can play around with these and get creative, linking up ritual with reward as part of repetition. Although be aware, that effective repetition requires engagement, awareness, and mindful intention. Bring your whole self to the practice session. You can't afford to be a zombie or a robot merely in repetition. Because according to the universal law of cause and effect, whatever you put in is what you'll get out. It's like programming, simple. And what do we want? Zombies and robots? No, we want artists. And so I wonder, have you ever been really surprised by accidentally playing or singing through a really troublesome passage flawlessly? I have, and I've seen students do it too. And it seems like magic, but this kind is deceptive and unreliable. It's not really a measure of success. And although it seems like a moment to celebrate, it's not helpful to get things right unintentionally. Sometimes it's the worst thing you can do. Nobody escapes the law of cause and effect. And if you want to play around with this universal law to your musical advantage, I have a lot to say about this, but not right now. Everything needs the balanced engagement of both the conscious and unconscious minds. You want to consider how to craft effective word choices with students for getting and setting goals, and for forging agreements with themselves and others. Also, train yourself to use words which engender cooperation between the two minds in the learning process. And much more can be learnt on the power of language. Also, in its non-verbal forms. And this is connected with cultivating professional rapport. Now, professional rapport is quite different from casual rapport. And this is something that's quite a detailed study in NLP. Speaking of the law of cause and effect, sometimes we can feel like passive victims when our hands, fingers, or voices fail to do what we practiced so hard and invested so much effort in. You've no doubt heard students say things like, I don't know what's going on. It's always fine at home. Or they protest, I've never made that mistake before. Now, these frustrations signal inattention, which indicates a lack of clear intention. Nonetheless, fluke experiences can serve well on two counts. First, happily, there's evidence that indeed it is within your capacity, your physical capacity, to play or sing that passage successfully. On the other hand, it's a red flag, a wake-up call, that you need to know what's going on internally to be able to follow the neurological pathways which will lead to your success in the future, and to be able to follow those pathways and to detect them, what the traps are that lead to your trouble. So never let yourself be a victim of circumstance. There's so much more to explore on this topic, and it goes into strategies, an NLP area. This has a great deal to do with where your eyes are going in your head when you're thinking. So it's an internal movement of the eyes going to different parts of the brain and accessing. Anyway, more on that if you read my book or do some training. Now, as a bridge leading us out of practice and into performance, I have two rehearsal techniques to introduce you to. They use the imagination to rein in and reinforce your intention in performing. And they can create a field of influence over the future. And here they are. So I'll just run through this quite quickly, because we need a break. The first script is a visualization in a story fashion from a dissociated perspective. This means that you guide your students through, or yourself, a visualization describing every step of the upcoming performance, from approaching the stage and the instrument to exiting, or the exam room. Now you have the person seated as if they're in the audience, anonymously, seeing and hearing the whole thing as if it's a movie. And the second script, over on the right, runs through exactly the same movie, but it's in an associated state. So you guide the student through their performance in their own body. You run the whole script, making it real in their body, seeing through their own eyes, hearing through their own ears, feeling it through their own fingers or voice and arms, right up until the exit. Now, I use these scripts for my own performances, and I like to introduce them to students inductively. So, if they're willing, they relax, close their eyes, and activate their imagination as they follow my voice. We can record the session in the lesson so they can listen again while going to sleep at night. And the audio serves as a self-hypnosis leading up to the performance or the event. And the scripts are printed in the training manual for my workshops. And I teach people how to use the voice for the best hypnotic effect. So just think, the more mental rehearsal you do, the less errors you keep repeating and programming into your system, and the less time you need to spend practicing. Every mental run-through increases your powers of attention, awareness, and presence. And the unconscious mind loves having an assignment with clear directions, because just like a puppy, it is programmed to please you. And here's the kicker. Your conscious mind is called on for staying on track until you've established this new way of being and seeing yourself and feeling confident. Now, I'd like to share something that came up in a question time at a recent presentation. A lovely colleague and friend of mine commented on mental rehearsal and wondering whether she was doing the right thing. She related that when preparing her students for exams, she gets them to imagine the worst case scenario. The room is cold, the examiner is unfriendly, a bit cranky, and doesn't seem to like you very much. They might be just having a bad day though, and you play well anyway. Now, my friend's intentions are completely caring and very rational. And I agree, it's great to give students a pep talk. Yet here's the thing. Remember that our unconscious minds are vulnerable and impressionable, especially in exceptional circumstances. Kids, even more so. Suggestions of hypothetical scenarios with even a hint of negative emotions are powerful provocateurs of fear. They constrict creative energy and repress expression. The whole point of my friend's message was, but you play well anyway, and this is wonderful, yet it will struggle under the weight of the unintended negative suggestions. Fear breeds fear, and it opens the door for students to start entertaining yet more worries to cover all bases. Unfortunately, these worry frequencies are projected unconsciously into the room before they even get to play a note. So I prefer to tell my students something true. I know this is true. Examiners love to hear music which makes them feel good, touches their heart, awakens their interest, Examiners work long, hard days, hearing the same pieces many times over. Examiners really dislike having to write a bad report. So go in there, give them a fresh, captivating, exciting performance, and see if you can bring the music alive for them. Nobody knows the future, yet you can influence what will happen by the way you meet it.
You want me to be on the screen, do you?
By the state you're in. And this works like swinging doors. It goes both ways, for good and bad. Now we'll pause here, and I'd like to take any questions on what's been said so far. If you have anything, I just would like to check in and be sure that we can continue without any confusion. Although confusion is a good thing. It's uncomfortable, but it always precedes learning something new. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now so that we can have a talk. Is there anything so far? Would you like to wave your hand or just unmute yourself? Julie.
Yes, look, a couple of things. What was the 10th of the characteristics of the unconscious mind? I didn't quite get it. There was take paths of least resistance, and then what was the 10th one?
Can learn in a flash of lightning. Can
All right.
learn
Okay.
concepts.
Okay. Now the other one is with the last screen that you were working on. To me, at this point in time, I feel there's a little bit of lack of differentiation between dissociated state rehearsal and associated state rehearsal. Can you sort of elaborate what exactly, very categorically, are the differences?
Sure. So dissociated, you bring yourself, let's talk about it as if it's ourself for the moment, because then you would be working with a student. So say I'm working with myself. I will get out of my body so that I can see my body in a movie, so that the movie I'm watching is myself walking onto the stage. I see myself sitting down. I hear myself playing. This is the way, obviously, the way you want it to be played. So it's outside your body. You're taking like a voyeur's perspective. You're an anonymous person watching yourself do this fantastic performance right till the very end. So, you know, you hear all the applause and so forth. Okay, so in contrast, the associated rehearsal is now where you step into your body. So you see, let's imagine you're playing the piano. You actually see the floorboards, you see the piano as you approach it. You see the audience. You're in your own body, looking at everything through your own eyes. You're hearing the music as you want to hear it played. You might see your hands. You might see music if you're using music. So it's through your own eyes. So you feel the emotions that are with that music and hear it all, feel the tactile, and take it right through to the end of the performance. You're in your own body. So it looks completely different. You can see the audience instead of seeing the stage in the other one. Does that answer the question?
Yes, so basically objective and subjective.
Yep.
Would be a good way of describing it.
Yep, that's right. Is there any, thanks, Julie. Is there anything else? Anybody else have a question? You might be keen to go and have a quick toilet break and get a...
Oh, Amanda, there is a question here from Cheryl.
Oh, okay. Cheryl, hi.
Hi, Amanda. Sorry, we missed a little bit of the beginning of your process there, unfortunately. But thank you very much for putting this on and doing this in this context. I was really interested in self-efficacy processes for your students and how to encourage them more and more to feel better about themselves. Yes, going to associated and really realizing their issues and their problems that they may have to undertake and recover. But how do they actually resource? And you may have covered this earlier when we weren't quite here, but how do they resource or learn to resource themselves to feel stronger and better about what they're doing, even in the advent of little mishaps and mistakes?
Thanks for that question. And I'm covering that. So I'm going to give some real life examples, from my studio. And I think that will answer your question. So if you can hold on.
Thank you.
That's coming. Thanks for the question. So
Could I just ask a question too? Yeah. When you talked about conscious mind and unconscious mind, you said like the conscious mind has a talent for creativity and initiative, and in the unconscious mind you had the domain of imagination using memories and symbols. So what did you mean by creativity? Like to me, creativity in definitely includes imagination and symbols. So
Yes.
how do you make that sort of a little bit different?
I think the creativity is from both minds. However, it's more that in the case of the conscious mind, that it's the conscious mind that initiates a
Right,
creative
okay.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
of course the unconscious mind will help carry that through. But yeah, it's the initiation. And
Yeah.
look, after the break, the topic we go into is the two minds. So there'll be a lot of unpacking of the differences between the two minds. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Nope. So why don't we have just a couple of minutes, if you'd like to get a drink and stand up, move around, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's go. Come back at please 20 to 12. I seem to be running a little bit late. 20 to 12. I'll see you then.
Thanks, Amanda. And she's gone. I think.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Yeah. And Emma just gave her apologies. She just had to leave early.
Okay, thanks. All right, back at 20 to 12. Back again. So how are we going? I can't see everybody. Actually, Jane, are most people back?
I think there might be a couple of people still to come back. Yeah. I think just Leela. Yeah, and then we'll be ready to go.
Okay, I might move ahead now.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks. So we've only just touched lightly on performance in this talk, and by now you'll have gathered it's all about language. By way of preempting the topic of metaphor with its linkage to intention, here's a quick little idea you might like to suggest to students as they prepare for performances. They find it quite exciting to take on the actor's role. So you could tell them something like this, along these lines. Music is magic. Think of yourself as a magician. You're practicing every little muscle movement in your playing or singing many, many times over, just as magicians do with their tricks. And as magicians do, you perform your moves on stage with your intention clearly in mind, carefully planning where and what and when to lead your audience's attention. And what you do to have them hear and see and feel what you intend. Keep spinning that spell in every moment with the audience entranced, following your lead, enjoying the magic they hear in your music. Okay, so we're going to move into the second topic now of the two minds. So the field of the mind is an infinite study, tracing the evolution of human consciousness. And so we want to start with understanding the distinctive roles and functions of the conscious mind and unconscious minds. Remember that your unconscious mind hears everything and feels it. Just before I go on, have I shared my screen? No, I don't think I have. Okay, so I just quickly get the slide. So because I forgot, this is the slide I had when I was telling you about music is magic. A piece of music can be a spell, delivering an enchanting experience. Model a magician's careful tactics behind the scenes and on stage. Music reaches into the mind, eliciting a rich range of images and emotions. Then we move to the next topic, the two minds. So, as I was saying, your unconscious mind hears everything, feels it, and takes it all on without discrimination. And again, the ramifications work both ways, for good or bad. So make really wise word choices all the time. By contrast, the conscious mind knows who's who and what's what. It's good at scheming, devising, contriving, judging. It reasons, plots and plans, knowing what you want. The conscious mind is your personality and your personal reality. encompassed within the solid sense of your identity. Now, think of an iceberg. The part that you see in the light of day is just the tip of it. And the berg's huge mass of ice under the water level, supports the tip. And that's the part above is all we can see. Human consciousness is just like the iceberg's tip, representing only around 5% of our entirety, whereas the unconscious mind is the very foundation of our being, representing a magnitude of 95% that we hardly know anything of. The conscious mind is clever and brilliant. This highly evolved part of the human brain, the neocortex, is what we use to understand how musical theory works and to grasp complex musical forms and concepts. When you're negotiating the intellectual and mathematical aspects of music, you want to be in an alert, stimulated state, yet simultaneously open to receive information coming in without any emotional resistances, like self-doubt and fear and so on. So for excellent results, you need to be discerning and know how to negotiate which mind and when. The ideal state is a beautiful paradox, being both relaxed and ready, a balance of both minds. Under the influence of anxiety, the capacity to learn and perform is heavily impeded, and many musicians experience old, unrelated trauma responses, with symptoms unexpectedly blowing up when facing performance situations. Now, in hypnotherapy and NLP, there are techniques to disable the old pattern by wiring up new pathways to meet the current circumstances so that old symptoms are not triggered. And this is done without reliving old, past traumatic events. And now I'm going to wind up. This was just a short little topic, and we're just going to recap the features and functions of the two minds. So as you see on the slide here, on the left, the conscious mind in that brown color sets goals, whereas the unconscious mind gets them. The conscious mind uses initiative, whereas the unconscious mind uses imagination. The conscious mind makes decisions. Your unconscious mind waits for decisions. The conscious mind is rational. The unconscious mind is spontaneous. The conscious mind is cognitive, whereas the unconscious mind is intuitive. And finally, the conscious mind experiences physical reality, whereas the unconscious mind experiences potential reality. And so next we'll see why metaphor and symbolism are such effective tools in teaching. And I'll give you some ideas on how to use them deliberately in your studio practice. So this is the last topic for today, metaphor. And so I'll just get you to just have a quick look at the slide there while I have a drink. As you know now, we want to choose positive words which prompt compelling images and feelings in accord with what we want to learn. And this holds true in both direct teaching and indirect teaching methods. Using metaphor is an indirect teaching technique. Metaphors are powerful agents for effective progress and change because they can sneak in and bypass our critical faculty. It works because you are drawing on characters and situations totally unrelated to the music at hand, or indeed the student. It sounds like you're tricking the mind to gain advantage, and that's right, you are. But you're not being deceptive or telling lies. A metaphor generates curiosity, and so long as your metaphor is subtle, it won't be received as personal correction. And depending on the student and their issue, the message could be conveyed through a story with an imaginary protagonist whose quest, flight, progress, and ultimate success is identified with and adopted at the unconscious level. Analogies are also very powerful in making quick changes in playing or singing. Do it on the spot by likening the desired outcome in the music to images and features and properties from the world of nature and fantasy. When you hit the mark, it arrives in a flash of illumination, and physiological changes arrive immediately. The bonus is that changes are lasting because they're incorporated into the player's identity and memory. And this becomes fused with the music in the nervous system. So here's an example. A few years ago, Kalia, I'll call her Kalia, was learning a little piece called Kinabalu's Sunrise. Back then, she was 11 years old. She was lovely, gentle, mild, quietly spoken, reserved girl. And she played rather timidly, producing a feeble tone, and her music lacked any forward momentum. And in many ways, it expressed both her external persona and possibly her internal self-concept. However, her playing needed melodic projection. So my job was to bring the best musical features to her playing. So she needed melodic projection, tonal depth, a commitment to flow and expression across the whole dynamic range. And up to this point, I'd only been able to coax these essentials out of her with exhortations and constant reminders. She wasn't able to deliver them authentically from her own volition, nor to repeat them. So I decided to approach this problem through her future self-concept. So I just let her know about all the lovely qualities I observed in her as a person. And I happened to know of her talent for creating intricate, imaginative ink illustrations. It's useful to know what your students love doing and what they're good at outside their lessons, because you can use these other resources to strengthen their music. And I'll touch on this again later. So we moved away from the piano for a moment, and I asked Kalia to imagine herself just finishing high school. See herself older, taller, going where she loves to go, and knowing she is an excellent artist. I had her imagine she's walking alone along a path in nature. Her beautiful drawings are with her. Everything is peaceful. And she feels so good knowing she's an artist. And the sun and the sky and the birds and the insects all see her as an artist in the world. It sounds so simple, and that only took a few minutes, but Kalia was playing with a deeper touch, a richer tone, and a sense of self-assurance and flow. Now, this is not about making wishful or untrue affirmations. You use suggestions which are likely to eventuate anyway. And remember, the unconscious mind can learn at lightning speed. And this is what happened. And now Kalia is 14. She remains lovely, gentle, and quiet in her character, yet she plays with solid sound and full conviction all the time. Now, her story is an example demonstrating how the body's intelligence responds in a flash to the imagination. The mind-body interface is a universal phenomenon you can hack into if you dare to. And so ask yourself, why wouldn't you? You can invent metaphors and symbols using events from your own life, or you can tap into fairy tales and mythology, themes from movies. Have them ready to adapt on the spot to the person and the situation. Now, here's another one. This is a great story. So, a 9-year-old boy, I'll call Aaron, arrived for lessons. He was playing at around about grade 1 level. And for your information, he is a homeschooled, neurodivergent, high-energy, intellectually brilliant kid, living on medications with socialization issues and a range of other challenges. Now, Aaron absorbed new material very quickly. Somehow he was capturing musical information and making a semblance of his music. He evaded reading because it was boring and he just wanted to play. His own way was far better because it gave him fast results. And he played really, really, really fast. And the further he got into the piece, the faster it got. So I tackled the tempo issue head on with explanations and demonstrations, as you do. And we did some little games. I had him playing the role of the highway patrol to detect my speeding in my playing. But he rolled his eyes up at that game. He just didn't care about tempo. He felt restricted having to play slower than he can. So now I'll tell you the metaphor that I came up with and how it completely resolved rushing. And incidentally, everything else changed along with that. I took a different angle. Instead of trying to fix him, I got myself into his headspace. I acknowledged his crave for speed and his ability to play fast. Now, he was completely captivated and identified with this story. And I watched a little smile sneaking over his face as I told it. So I said something like this. Imagine yourself a racing car driver. You have a brand new, wonderful red Ferrari. And today you're taking it out for a test run. You're going to get familiar with the cross-country track. You love this car and you can't wait to feel the speed it's capable of and the control you'll experience handling it. You're a team now, and tomorrow is the big rally. You envisage a superb performance. So you get the car out on the track, taking note of where the straight runs are, the bends, the curves, the crests and dips, registering where the road widens and narrows, where the surface is smooth, and you note the areas of loose gravel. You will meet the conditions with mastery. You feel sheer delight changing gears, accelerating and braking as you negotiate the course. You really enjoy this stunning car and feel so much pleasure in your ability to control it so easily. Well, it worked like magic. Straight off the mark, he played everything with rock-solid tempo, in full command. He identified with the driver's expertise. I was astonished, but I carried on as if nothing of enormity had happened. This way, he got to feel fully in charge of his choice and his success. Didn't have anything to do with me. Now, the metaphor not only changed his attitude to tempo, but he began to incorporate rational learning, considering notation a thing within his power now. Aaron is now almost 14 and preparing diligently for grade 6. He even likes the slow pieces. Anyway, since that day, he's never, ever lost control or rushed his playing. And it all came about as a byproduct of this experience. Now, symbols, analogies, metaphors go straight to the unconscious mind, whereas a set of technical directives has to be figured out by the conscious mind. Now, while that process is engaging and fascinating, it's more laborious and less artful. Information has to be decoded into precise quantified units of time and location, operating with the laws of motion, energy, weight, and acceleration. And like me, some people relish resolving technical and mechanical problems. In fact, I loved studying human anatomy and movement in the body-minded course I did, which is Alexander Technique training. The power of the mind to influence the physical realm is extraordinary. And for the most part, we don't tap into it. But the more ways in which a thing can be experienced and understood, so much better. So I advocate everything. And now we'll talk a little bit about how you can map across, pardon me, excellence into music. To make learning music seem easier, you can utilize areas students have already acquired good coordination, competency, and confidence in. Then you map across a particular skill to assist them in solving the problem they're having in their music. They'll experience the principle of success breeding success by knowing they can draw on their existing inner resources. So you find the similarities that arise in other activities. So it could be athletics, ball games, cycling, dance, martial arts, even video gaming fits the bill here if they're good at it. Now, I just want to let you know that I actually draw on driving experiences quite often with teenagers and adult students. And they catch on to how driving in everyday traffic, that's not the racing car thing, just everyday traffic, relates to some of the challenges that we meet in playing or singing. So here's some examples we encounter on the road and in music. Just picture this for yourself now. Reading, like seeing ahead while being where you are right now. Being well positioned and prepared for what's coming. Dealing with unexpected events in the moment. Trusting yourself to meet any changing conditions. Letting less than ideal moments go. Don't look back. Timing your moves, turns, and changes. Coordinating where you're looking with what you're doing. Keeping on going, feeling fine, and being in the flow. And look, there's lots more. Encourage students to take heart, knowing that their neurology has a storehouse of skills they've already got. Remind them that fortunately, things come into perspective because making music doesn't have any of those risks that driving does. Anyhow, so we've come to question time. We're winding up now. And I'll just invite you to, again, ask me, is there any questions? What do I need to know?
So I can't get rid of the main screen, but I do have one thing to say. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So what I wanted to ask, what came into my mind, was the actual idea of how students work, practice.
Yeah.
And to me, what is very important, and I'm wondering how this relates to the conscious and unconscious. I find that learning in very discrete bundles or what would you say? A handful, all right? So it's not too much. Just to look at a small amount and become familiar with it and almost love it for what it is,
Yes.
rather than dashing through and you're going into the unhelpful unconscious side of practicing, which is that you're dissociated.
Yes.
And how to kind of bring that out. Yes, metaphor I think is wonderful, but also the encouragement of looking at small things and reveling in the joy of discovery.
Absolutely. This comes into the making of internal representations. Exactly what you've said, Julie. I agree that to take a small part to progress into the piece rather slowly. Of course, to get an overview of the whole thing, so you have a context, but when it comes down to literally playing it through, to take small sections and to begin creating internal representations. So this is bringing interpretation in quite early, but so that it's very set in the mind of the player what it means, and to create all of the different senses, something from the visual, something, of course, the auditory is already given to us by the music itself, but to include visual, to include feeling, emotional feeling, and even associations with olfactory smell, perhaps, and taste as well, so that it's very, very, very strongly fused into the music. So it's not just a set of black and white notes and, mechanical movement to find the notes on whatever instrument that you're playing. So it's advisable. I think it's advisable to do this, because your internal representation is what can carry you through a performance, so that you're not performing so much for yourself, but what the meaning of the music, you've actually taken a lot of time and care to know what it is that what your message is in the music to convey to a listener. So that's got so much to do with intention. So everybody's intention is different. So for you and I know a lot of people here in performance, the intention is about the music, whereas perhaps some people, depending on their situation, their age, whatever, their intention may be to pass an exam, and there may not be very much more depth to their intention in some sort of performance, in which case it's fraught. So for myself, I believe that it's almost no point having a shallow intention. Anyway, I just think what you said, Julia, is what I would recommend myself too. It's taking that time to really intimately know something and to take it into your internal sensory world to be able to convey it. We can talk about this another day if you like. Jane has something?
Just could you stop the screen sharing, because otherwise, yeah, it's a little bit hard
All
for
right.
everyone to communicate and to see if someone wants to ask a question.
I just, if there's anything else, if there's nothing else, I won't do it
Well,
because
I can't see Cheryl, but perhaps Cheryl wanted to ask something.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Very intuitive of you, Jane. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, I saw you unmuted yourself, so yeah. Yeah.
Sneaky, very sneaky. Thank you, Amanda. That's wonderful. I had a query about being connected with music and doing that sort of thing. We're usually very auditory and kinesthetic because we're actually feeling what we're doing and we're hearing what we're doing, we're understanding it. How do you invoke some sort of metaphors within the students to get them to think from the visual and from the mind space process to get that metaphor in all of the modalities? Because I think it's fairly important to sort of lock it in on every level so that you get the most perfect result.
Yes. Usually, most people are quite visual, at least in our sort of society. I think in other times and places there was a lot more auditory, but these days in our world, a lot of people are visual. So it's just occasionally that I will get a student who will say, "Oh no, I don't have, I don't get pictures," and there's one student who's now about 50, and when she was playing a certain piece for her AMSA, it was a Cacciatorian toccata. She said, "I just don't get this. You know, there's no melody, there's no harmony," and it was all just a jungle for her. She just didn't get it. And so I took her through, well, here's, you know, the Armenian army of centuries ago coming through on their horses, they're galloping, they're raiding, you know, it's all this sort of imagery. And she said, I just don't see it. So I asked her, okay, what would it feel like if you were on one of those horses? Just actually imagine, what would it feel like? And so she got sensations of feeling. Then there's an interlude in the middle part of the section. Again, of the piece, she didn't get it. So I said, okay, imagine what it would feel like. You've had a hard day's ride, and now you've got a campfire, and everybody's just relaxing around the campfire after a hard day's ride. Just imagine what that would feel like. And you can feel the warmth of the fire and the freezing cold air. And I just took her through as many sensations as possible. So I've done this with her over the years with all her pieces because she's very, very, very kinesthetic. She said to me, you know, about a year ago, she said, "I can't believe this. I'm seeing pictures now." So I believe, and Milton Erickson said this, that no matter what, if people actually say they are not visual, it is there. It's just not their preferred system of recording information, but it is there. And so the other wonderful thing is that he discovered that synesthesia is a highly intelligent, it appears in very highly intelligent people, whereas a century ago or more than, it was considered a condition, a pathological condition. So isn't it incredible how things change? So anyway, I'm talking about, you know, a synthesis of all the sensations to contribute towards whatever internal representation a person is formulating to interpret a piece of music. So it's really strong inside. And this is another good thing when you're on stage, because when that is so strong, it's about the music, not you. Yeah. Thanks for that question.
Thank you.
Is it Michael?
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering if I could get you to comment about the role or the power of improvisation in the pedagogical environment, in as much, apropos your talk, it seems to be something that helps to connect the conscious and the unconscious, that the idea that you're composing on something, or you take something difficult, you turn it upside down, you tinker with it and just enjoy it as a game where you become mindful in that moment, like your last example, that someone just got caught up in a horse ride and stayed with 10 bars and ended up a minute later being able to say, oh, what did I just do? Could you talk a bit about that?
Yes. And there's so many layers to look at here. So you know those little analogies that I gave with driving and playing music? We need to improvise driving. We've got a general idea of, I mean, not a general idea, we know where we're going. But a lot of driving is improvising because you don't know what will happen, but you have an intention and a map. But what will happen along the way, who knows? And one aspect of playing non-improvised music is the fact that you need to improvise in the moment, because often things just don't go exactly as planned. And so there is definitely a degree of improvisation required in playing a scored piece of music. But then with improvisation itself, in some ways, we've lost it. As the musicians here will know, that centuries ago, before Mozart's time, people improvised. They weren't just reading all the dots. Musicians were improvisers, often composers and performers and teachers. You know, they wore all the hats. So we type of lost a lot of that in classical music anyway. There's not really any improvisation going on. But most of us, well, I don't really know, but I know that there's, whether it's most of us, but there's a lot of interest. Classical teachers realize they can't do this, and so many are interested in getting training and recognize how useful this is. And so, yes, I think when improvising, there's certainly a deeper, well, there's handing over more to the unconscious mind and asking the conscious mind to rest somewhat. It depends how free you want to go. Like I have a protocol I use and I give to students for improvisation, but this is a free improvisation. So it's, I've written it all out with steps to go through. But for instance, it's to use the piano, turn off all the lights or maybe light a candle, and to select some, either sort of a landscape or some emotion or just something, subject matter, and to explore the instrument, the whole top to bottom, all the pedals, loud, soft, fast, slow, all the touches. Don't have to use your fingers, use anything to create sound that will contribute towards the image that you have or the feeling that you have to express that subject that you've chosen. So that's, you know, totally free improvisation. But as you know, there's degrees of how much improvisation is free and how much is structured. So I guess the more structured a piece of music, the more conscious mind is required to, you know, follow the chart and to play with other players. So there's a consensus on the key and the rhythm and the meter and so forth. So I think it's all a sort of, you know, like a spectrum, some type of.
I think it's a strategy when required. I mean, it really struck me going back some years now, auditioning students when we opened the department at Western Sydney. we always ask students to do a 1-minute improvisation on their instrument.
Yes, I remember, because students would say, "Oh no, I have to go and audition for
Yeah,
the Western
well,
Sydney Uni."
what was so interesting about that is the pianist playing their pianos were inferior to other instrumentalists, and vice versa. The pianist would oh, Alberti bass and trot out
Yeah.
some cycle of fifths and chord progressions. Oh, I'm stuck. And yet you get a guitarist to thump around on the piano, and suddenly they've got the pedals down, they're exploring the whole range. And it struck me as something that has become an ingrained barrier in the way we think about ourselves. And I think, yes, the AMEB is great, but it's also an incredible impediment to a lot of people because as you said, you pass the exam, you move on. And we've lost, the ability to improvise fugues as Bach and Weiss and others did. But I mean, we can't turn that all around. But it seems to me that we're now, with your work, we're looking at how we can reconnect with that deeper sense of what it is to play. And I know from my work, again, a while ago in music therapy, I want to know whether you see any resonance with your work, that working with, say, an impulse-ridden 14-year-old adolescent, speech impediment, sociopathic, hiding, running out of the classroom, smoking behind the toilets, didn't want to talk to the therapist. I used to work in Murray Bashir's adolescent unit as a music therapist. So what do? Okay, you help them to confront their inner turmoil, not by sitting dumbstruck in a psychologist's room, but you say, let's write a song. So you show them, then they go away and do it, and you actually get them to the point where they start to connect. But you think, hang on, it's a bit threatening. What do? You give them a microphone to take home or wherever they're staying, and they might not be able to think they've got it. So again, I'm using the metaphor. You're going to be in a band. If you want to be, you can call it your own band. And you gradually work to allow them to reimagine, to create their own movie, using your term, about what it might be like. But you don't put any restrictions on what they say. If it's a bit risque, okay. But what you end up with is the smoking blues and about running out. And then you invite them one day to perform that at lunch in front of their peers or with their peers.
Yeah.
And they're rewarded by saying something that's considered taboo about themselves. It seems to me we have to keep plugging into that. And I know it's a bit tangential, but I think I might be on a similar wavelength to you. And now I'm understanding your perspective about the NLP, and that's given me a new insight into that idea of the movie. I think it's a great idea of stepping up, going in, which of course, using a lot of terminology can be quite threatening to a younger person. But like your car, I found the notion of the band. We're talking about the late, the early 80s, so much popular music, and the idea to embrace that. And ultimately, kids like this often go on and learn an instrument. Do you think there's something we've got to do that stops the division between types of musical engagement? It seems to me music as a communication medium, music therapy, the capacity to change your life. We're actually doing that when we're learning and studying for an exam. We're engaging with a teacher. So how do we become more receptive? How do we get your message out to sort of break down the hegemony of, you must do this at the highest level to pass that, because you see the terror. And I know some very fine musicians, composers, that gave up playing. They were just too terrified because of the syndrome of the tap on the shoulder, the chatter, the bully inside the head, saying there's only one way. Do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think
your work is moving towards helping us to do that?
Yes.
Make that change?
I think so. I have noticed there are so many more ordinary kids that have got all sorts of extraordinary conditions. And I think we all know that mental illness is on the increase. It's rife. So if music can alleviate that, so much the better. I had a boy, he was 20, who was seeing a psychologist every week. His father could hardly afford it. And anyway, he came for piano lessons, and he just sort of said, I don't need to see a psychologist, you know. And so fortunately, the piano lessons for them were probably about the third of the price, or maybe a quarter. Which hasn't really answered the question, but, you know, you touched on songwriting. So I think, you know, we're seeing so many songwriters. It's singer-songwriters is what I meant, because, you know, they're expressing words. And I mean, I certainly do that with little kids. I've got a whole book that the words were generated by kids. So I talk to kids, and we write a song about it. And in the meantime, they see how the piece is actually written, and they get to choose how the melody's going to go, you know. And I guess there's lots of different ways. I've got mine, but I'm working with the people that come to me. And they're not all, generally they come to me for piano lessons, and that's what I've got to do, because that's what they're paying me for. So I'm sort of like sneaking in anything else that I can as I go. Look, I'm just noticing a lot of people are leaving. So is it okay if we just talk? I know everybody here, so maybe we can just have a chat some other time if there's more questions. If that's okay.
I think Greg had a question. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. He put his hand up. Yeah.
It was actually just more congratulations, Amanda, for the concept of taking NLP to add it to the musical learning experience, because music is so broad and amazing, and so many elements, and NLP has the capacity to reach in directions where other things just wouldn't. So yeah, well done. I'm a bit of a fan of NLP, and I can see it just benefiting people in lots of ways.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen again, and we're winding up. So have you got my screen back there? And we've finished our question time, and your unconscious mind is always curious and likes to fill in the gaps. So the missing pieces, it reminds me to tell you about that gypsy girl. Now, one day, after the young woman had indeed acquired many skills, her master instructed her to bring in a batch of clean glass jars from the back room. She responded to his instruction exactly as always, and in doing so, this day, she walked straight through that stone wall. She didn't even notice intention imprinted on the screen of her mind, and you will learn. So we have wound up, and I thank you for your interest and all your questions. It's great to have this dialogue with you. So let me just say, I think as teachers and people in this industry, whatever we are doing, whether it's therapy, education, whatever, I think our greatest assets are our imagination and curiosity. Now, if you get this feeling that this is all very well, but there's a huge amount to learn, well, you're right. There is a huge amount to learn. And I've barely scraped the surface of it here, of what you can do in a music lesson. But you're welcome to come and join me in a training, or please send people along. It's a fascinating field. So I do intend to run 3-day trainings in mid-January at the Joan Sutherland Centre. So But let you go. It's 12:30. Thanks for choosing to spend your time with me this morning. And I wish you all a brilliant day. Let's go and daydream. Thank you. So I'll see you all around.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Julia. Bye, Cheryl.
Yeah, well done.
Bye,
Cheers.
Deb.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Greg. Bye, Jim. Bye, Norleen. And Mom. Have a lovely day, everyone.
I'll just wait, Amanda, because you might want to read some of the messages people have sent
Oh,
you.
thanks, Jane.
Yeah. That was beautiful, Amanda. Well done.
Thank you.
Really complete and really interesting. Yeah, lots of things for people to work on and be inspired by there. That was great. So yeah, Christine and Mina left early, so they gave their apologies.
Okay, thanks.
David Reedy was waiting in a bus to take his marching band back
I know.
from there. So he sent me a message about halfway through saying, I might have to go if they all come back early,
Yep.
But fortunately he got there to the end. So just have a check out of all the messages there. Can you access that?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to stop the recording and I can't
Right,
find
yeah.
it.
Oh,
Up the
I think
top.
it stops when I stop the meeting. Does it or not?
I don't know because I was the one
No,
that
it
pressed.
shouldn't though. Yeah, hang on. Let me find.
Um,
Here's the
here it
record
is.
button. Have you got
Stop.
it? There should